In this video I'm going to show you how to use the basic interface on Unreal Engine 4. I've got the Epic Games Launcher up and running here. I'm going to click the Go Offline button and just wait for it to start up. That will open up a window like this where you can see all the latest kind of updates and news and so on, and also it gives you the option of updating your engine version and going on the marketplace and so on to see what assets you can purchase. The Learn tab at the side here is really useful, so if you want to get started learning the engine, you can use these quick starts. I'd recommend probably the level design quick start if you're a game design student, game art student, perhaps the artist quick start. Plus there's also this getting started with UE4, which covers a lot of the stuff that I'm going to show you here anyway. I'm going to start the engine here. I'm working on 4.13.0. I'm just going to launch that, and in a few seconds we'll have the editor up and running. So once the editor's open, you'll have a window like this with any existing projects that you've worked on, and you'll notice on this that it shows you the engine versions that they've been created in. You can upgrade versions, but you can't really go back and take something from a newer version back into an older version of the engine. So for this I'm going to create a new project, and you'll see there's different types of templates to start with. Everything from a blank page all the way through to flying, first person, third person, 2D games. There's even vehicles and VR templates that are already set up for you as well. I'm going to use the rolling demo as a starting point for this one because it's a simple one to look at initially. When you create your game, you can specify whether it's going to be for desktop or console or mobile and tablet. I'm going to leave it on the desktop mode for this. If you do choose tablet, then you've got some limitations you've got to work within regarding textures and materials and so on. So we'll stick with desktop for now. Have it on the maximum quality, and in this case I will add the starter content. Now usually I'd recommend not adding the starter content because it adds quite a large chunk to your file size, probably about 2 gigs or so last time I looked. So I'll do it this time, but usually I'd recommend not doing that. Select your folder, give it a project name. Call it first project, and we'll create the project. So that's nearly loaded up now. And here we have the rolling ball template. Now the first thing you'll notice on the editor is this large window here. This is the viewport window, and you can do a bit of basic navigation with it. So the left mouse button will pan your camera left and right, and moving the mouse forward and backwards sort of zooms it in and out. The right mouse button does a similar thing, gives you more of an option to sort of look around. You can use the middle mouse button as well to move yourself up and down. You can also hold the two buttons together to move up and down. Works in the same way. Another useful thing that you can use is holding down the Alt key, clicking on object using left mouse. That will, oops, just undo that. That will let you orbit around an object. So just holding down the mouse button, the left mouse button, and holding down Alt. And similarly, if you hold down Alt and the right button, then it gives you that zoom in and out feature as well. So that's basic moving around. You can also use the W, A, S and D keys. So if you hold down one of the mouse buttons and you can use the WASD to strafe from side to side or move in forwards and backwards as you would do as in a video game. So take a little while to get used to the basic controls and how to kind of come up close to objects and move around them and so on. It's a useful set of skills to develop. Okay, so once you've had a look at the viewport, you might want to just see what the game's like. So there's a big play button at the top. Hit the play button and you'll see that the game starts. You usually do need to click just on the screen once in the center there just to get the game running, and here I'm just using WASD to roll this ball around. It's quite a nice demo. You can sort of knock things over, and it's got a jump feature when you click the mouse button or press spacebar, and little ramps and things you can roll along. Once you've finished testing, just press escape and you'll be able to escape out of the game. So that's the basic viewport controls. In terms of placing objects, adding objects into the world and changing objects already there, you'll see on the side here there's this modes panel, and the default one is this place panel where all the objects are. So you've got cubes, spheres, cylinders and so on, plus lights, characters and various other things, trigger boxes which are useful for triggering things to happen when you sort of walk into them or roll into them. You've got more lights on the side here, so additional lights, more than the basic ones. There's things to do with cameras, things to do with special effects that you might want to look at later on. Geometry, this is geometry that's kind of baked into the level. I tend not to use it a huge amount, but it is useful for kind of quickly blocking out sort of prototypes, level spaces. Volumes are a little bit more complicated, but again, those are useful for things like post-processing, where you can change the kind of look of the viewport when you walk into a post-process volume. And this one here, this all classes, has got absolutely everything in there that you might want. Let's just start with something basic. So we're going to add a cube, just drag it into the level there, and we're going to zoom in on it slightly just so we can see it a little better. And you notice that it's kind of placed into the floor. So we've got some tools at the top here where we can translate, which basically means move the object. We can rotate the object, or if we want to make it bigger or smaller, we can scale it. So you just click on whichever one of these you want to use, and then you can use these handles to move the object around, up, down, left, right and so on. Or if you go into the center, then it lets you pick different axes that you want to move it on. Similarly with the scale, that will scale it in one direction, another direction, but if you grab the center, it'll scale it in all directions. And the same with rotate. You can either rotate on individual axes or adjust things kind of how you want to. Using that, I think you can only adjust one axis at a time on rotation. You can use the local coordinates or the world coordinates. So for example, world coordinates here, this object moves across the angle at which it's placed at. So if I just rotate that slightly more, say like that, and we're still on the local object coordinate system, you see how it moves in the angle at which the object's been rotated to. Whereas if I turn this into world view, then it'll move the object around on the kind of straight axis, the axis that the world itself is set to. You've got options here to lock the snapping. So if you wanted to snap things to a grid, you could turn this on. It's on by default, and it's set to a value of 10. Whereas if you turn it off, it'll let me move that wherever I want. If I turn it on, again, it's snapping it to every 10, and you can make that more obvious. So every 100, you can see it snapping across like so. You've got similar settings with the rotation and with the scale as well. There's also a camera speed setting, so when you're using the WASD buttons to move around, you can change this camera speed, so moving that up makes it a lot quicker, and of course slowing that down makes it all a lot slower. So good for doing sort of fine tuning work, or if you're working on large worlds, then you'd want to set that way back up to the maximum. There are different views, so you can go for top kind of orthographic views, left, right, front, back, and so on. Most of the work tends to be done in perspective view these days, although if you were used to using the old Unreal Engine, you could use one of the orthographic perspectives. You can also show some extra bits of information, like the frames per second that things are running at. There's quite a handy game view option that kind of hides all the little widgets and things. And there's something called immersive mode as well, which gives you like the full screen to work within. So these are kind of useful features to have if you want to sort of make more use of your game. You can also, if you want, turn off the viewport UI. So if you just want it to have just a game screen without all the extra bits and pieces, you can turn on and off the viewport UI. So you could hide all of this. And there you've got a fairly sort of clean space to be working in. Another useful tool in here, just turn the UI back on, is the screenshot tool. So create high resolution screenshot lets you choose the screenshot multiplier, so you can get some really high resolution screen captures using this, much better than just using the built-in sort of print screen button or the snipping tool. You can use these and get some really nice shots for your publicity materials and so on that you might be working on. Across the top in modes as well, there's some other features. So painting is for when you want to paint onto objects, lets you paint different colours onto the ground and so on. You've got the landscape tool where you can paint and sculpt. There's various other tools for painting foliage and also manipulating shapes. But mainly, certainly for level building, this is one of the places where you'll start off with. If you want to find objects, obviously you can click things in the viewport, but when your level starts to get quite big, there'll be a lot of things to find. So this world outline is really useful. So say for example we were kind of looking out of the way and we didn't know where our ball was. We wanted to find that ball. We've named it ball previously. We can tell that it's there. You click on that. It's got a handy little camera view there that tells you where it is, but also if you press the F key, then it will zoom your view to where you are. Similarly, when you select any other object, you press F and it will kind of zoom you to what you want to be looking at. So that's a quick way of navigating the space if you know what you're looking for. The content browser is where all your assets are kept. I tend to turn on this panel at the side here. It just gives you a little bit of an easier way to navigate around. The general way that it's set up is you would have a folder with the geometry in. In this case there's just one called meshes, and inside here you've got the basic cubes and the ball and so on that the games are made of. This one called rolling, which has got the materials in there, so the orange material that you can see in the checkered ball, and it's got the actual ball mesh there as well. And then the BPs are what what we call blueprints. Now, blueprints are where all the controls are set up and any of the interactive features and objects that you tend to sort of use the blueprint language for, and also the actual level itself, which is it's called a map, and that sits under the map. So it's good to organise things kind of from the outset, really. And then you've also got the starter content folder. Now, this is all kinds of useful stuff that it gives you initially, building blocks for making kind of structures with. There's some audio files in there, some basic blueprints, there's some example levels, different materials, bricks and so on that you can use and modify yourselves. There's some particles, lots of different props, chairs, tables, some rocks, some more basic shapes, and some additional textures and so on. So that's what comes in that when you click add starter content, that's what it adds to your project. If you want to add objects, so for example, if I wanted to add let's say one of these chairs, you just simply drag and drop it into the world, and you can see that there's a chair been added. Let's turn off the snapping just so we can place it as we want. And to make another one, you can either drag another chair on, or you can hold down Alt. It is there. You hold down Alt and it will duplicate the object for you. It's a quick way of just adding extra objects into the world. And these are all independent objects now, so you can adjust the scaling, etc. as you need. You've also got the details here in the details panel, so you can specify by number. If you want to reset values and so on, you just click these little arrows here, but you can specify by number, the rotation values, the location values, scale values, whether or not these objects can be moved within the game. So static, it's more efficient, and there's different options, stationary and a movable object as well, which you can set these to. So movable objects are basically things that are dynamic within the game. Here you set the materials, so you can choose different materials. If you wanted a cobbled stone chair, for example, you could set that. Not that you want to do that, I suppose. Click that to reset the material. And then finally you've got a few options up here, so you can change the lighting setup, unlit to wireframe. I mean, lit tends to be the most useful one. There's different options for looking at the player collision, so things that the player will actually bump into, gives you the simplified view, but you can see where all your collision meshes are. So if you kind of find you walking into invisible walls and things, you can turn that on to see where those things are. And also, if you find that your game is running a bit slow on the computer that you're running at, you've got these engine scalability settings. So if I set that down to low, you'll notice that when I press play, the resolution is really kind of dropped. It looks really kind of blocky. So if you ever see that happening, it's possibly that your engine scalability settings are set to be too low. You can use auto as well. It will kind of optimize things for you. In addition, you can set it like super high. And it'll run, reasonably well, depending on the abilities of your machine. Obviously, if you set frames per second viewer on, you can see what your average frames per second is. And I'll leave it to that point now. If you need to find out a bit more about the basic interactions of the viewport, you go into the help system here, click on viewport controls, and it'll take you to the Unreal website. It tells you what all the different buttons do, just to kind of get you used to navigating the space.